So, I received a new air compressor today, which I use on my anti-vibration table. I'd previously been using the compressor from another rig, but I decided it would be better to have separate compressors on each of the optical tables. So I thought I'd do a quick video on the new compressor and all of the nasty bodges that I had to do to get it working, but it is working now. There are a few couplers that I've had to order, but it basically works. So anyway, this is my optical table. There's another one, a smaller one with a heavier top that I have for the AFM, but this is another one that I have for doing just kind of my ad hoc kind of experiments. For those of you who don't know, an optical table is basically it's a vibration isolation platform. So this top is pretty heavy. I think the top on this one probably weighs somewhere in the region of 100 kilograms, I'd guess. And it basically floats on a bed of air. There's a pneumatic system which lifts up the table, so it's actually floating, and you can see it kind of floating up and down. And the air pressure that drives the pneumatic and that the top sits on is created by the compressor. So if we move a little bit further forward, hopefully we can get a better look at the compressor. So I think you could probably use a cheap like Chinese air compressor, but I decided to buy a Junair, which is more expensive. It was a couple of £100 on eBay, and I think new they're pretty pricey, but it's what I've seen used before, so I decided to go for it. The vacuum tables, the vibrational isolation tables, optical tables I've seen before, all seem to use this 6mm outer diameter tubing, and they have the quick release couplers which connect to that. So it's important to get the right coupler on your air compressor. This did have the right coupler on it, but it was pretty mashed and it was leaking like anything. So I kind of jabbed it with a soldering iron until it stopped leaking so much, and then wrapped PTFE tape around it, and that closed that leak. The compressor is not in great condition actually, so there were a bunch of leaks, and I had to pull off all of these. So I had to pull off the gauges and each coupler, and rewrap them with PTFE tape just to seal them up. And now I can't hear any leaks, and it seems to be okay. It seems to be keeping pressure. I haven't heard it once it brought the table up to pressure. Once it's filled the tank, it cuts off, and then it seems to, it doesn't need to have switched back on to bring the table up to pressure again, which means there's probably no leaks. So yeah, that seems to be okay. I've ordered a bunch of new couplers. I also kind of mashed this with a soldering iron just to seal this off, because this was the original piping on it, which is I think 8mm outer diameter. So I couldn't use it with a table, so I sealed this off just to seal off this vent. So that's about it. You have this controls the pressure coming from the tank, so you can turn that off, and then to release the pressure in the system, you open this valve and it will slowly bleed the pressure out, and then that's now off effectively, and I could disconnect this from the table, and you can also kind of set the pressure of this. So if I turn that back on, you'll see there coming up. Close it off again. So now it's released a bunch of pressure from the tank, so it needs to come back on again and build up the pressure. I think the June Air ones I think are a bit quieter. So that's just, yeah, bleeding off a bit. Yeah, and the table is up again. So that's the compressor. Then there's some more, like it's, you know, I was kind of a bit scared of it, but I think it's fairly straightforward to get these things up and running. On the table itself, you have to make some adjustments. So let's see if we can get the camera in a position where I can actually see that. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just have to do this by hand. Okay. I'm not sure that you can see that very well. Let me get the lighting. Just the lighting. I have terrible lighting in this shed. Okay, so you can probably see just about this thing here. This is basically a valve. So when this goes down, it increases the pressure. It kind of opens the valve, I guess, and releases more pressure into the pneumatic system and raises the table. So this is what controls how far the table should rise. So when you're setting up the table, you have to adjust these little knobs, and they're different configurations, but they're basically all the same. And this just checks the level of the table and presses down on this release valve, which releases more pressure into the pneumatic system, or if a table is too high, bleeds the pressure out. So it maintains a specific pressure based on the height of this surface. You can see this is bouncing up and down. So yeah, that's all there is to it, really. Let's just have another quick look at the whole setup. Yeah, that's all there is really to the system. The table surface itself has all of these screw holes on it, which is kind of a standard for optical stuff. I'm not really using it for optical stuff, but you know, you have stuff so you can mount things directly onto the table. On top of it, I actually have this Faraday cage, which I use, you know, for electrical shielding. But yeah, that's the table and the compressor setup.